In conversation with Frank Conrad Musumici. Frank Conrad Musumici is an award-winning singer, songwriter, and author. He was born in New York City and raised in Hoboken, New Jersey. Mr. Musumici has been awarded a Best Contemporary Fiction Book Award, a Best Inspirational Poem Award, and a Best Short Story Award from the Akademia Music and Literary Awards, California, United States of America. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today Frank Conrad with Cindy Breck hosting me in a conversation. Welcome on the show, Frank.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate it.
We enjoy having you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure really to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on. So, Frank, I'd like you to tell us about your collection of wide-ranging and widely imaginative tales in the name of Event of an Ordinary Life. I would like to ask you how this book came about. What inspired you to write Events of an Ordinary Life?
Well, I've always been a writer, even when I was a kid. I had a knack for writing, and I always kept a journal.
Well,
Um, and basically, what inspired me was people. I like people. I like to, hear their stories.
yeah.
And I like different cultures and I like basically the stories from that people have from their grandparents and grandparents, and every life is a story, and it's got everything in it. It's got excitement, it's got love, it's got everything that a good story has
Oh,
is embedded within the lives of people. So
yeah.
so what inspired me was just not analyzing, but knowing people and getting to know them and stuff like that. Also, I was a private detective, and that inspired me. I had a lot of different files, a lot of different stories, that came out of real life situations, and I have some of those stories in the book also.
Sounds quite great to me, really. Sounds like a lovely way to becoming a writer. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
So
Thank you.
your background could definitely add a lot of excitement to storytelling, especially with being an officer and all there. Um, okay, I want to understand a little bit more here, like some of the themes that you might get into, or if you could give us a sneak peek at some of the subject lines, picking up your book, that kind of stuff, just so it gives the reader, a potential reader, a little bit more information about your book.
Okay, it's a collection of stories, they're short stories,
Mm.
and some of them are taken from real life situations that I experienced as a private detective, and others from just stories that I got from speaking to people and their histories and things like that.
Mm.
And also there are some metaphysical type of stories, a little supernatural and stuff, which I always liked when I was a kid. So I kind of put them together in a collection, and that's why it skips the different types of stories. It's not just like science fiction or maybe just horror, or not one genre, but
Yeah,
a lot of different types of stories.
Okay.
that's
Okay, that gives
interesting.
a little bit more view. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was amazing to know, really. Love your take on that. I would also like to ask you about how you integrate storytelling with writing songs as a songwriter that you are. How exactly do you integrate storytelling with writing songs? I would love your take on that.
Actually, when I was young, when I was a kid in school,
Mm,
I had the knack for writing. I always used to write things, uh, but then after a while, I found out that I was had musical ability.
mm,
I was able to sing, and so a song is only a very short story. It's a story put into rhyme,
yeah.
and music. So it's another story. So it was easy to go from, writing a regular story to writing a song. A song has all the aspects and everything of a short story, but it's within like 5 minutes or whatever the length of song is. So it's just another short story.
Oh,
Right. Songs writing is not my forte. That's a skill in itself.
yeah.
It definitely is. And I
Yeah.
compliment you on that because you're adding a lot there and stuff. And so, and I find it very interesting, but I also wanted to ask you, since you're mixing a lot of this together,
Mhm.
how do you interpret people's readers' feedback? I mean, some readers may want to agree with you that one of the things that makes literature it is to be a complex in its entirety is that the fact that it can be interpreted in so many different ways, based on people's opinions, their own
Right.
history, their background, and stuff. And when you're adding songs and making these short stories, and you're adding the paranormal aspect, maybe the science fiction, do you find it interesting that some people can misunderstand your interpretation when they read it? And when they do misunderstand it, how do you deal with that? How does it make you feel? And stuff. I'm just kind of curious about your take on that.
Well, I love it because, when I write a story or even a song,
Mm,
I try to make it as generic as I can so that the reader or the listener can put their own take on it. And sometimes I'll write a story, like in one particular story, it was about Hurricane Sandy, which hit the region where I live,
mm,
and I wrote it as as myself, as what I experienced, and there was a woman that wrote to me and said, I loved the story about the woman who went through this experience.
mm,
So and I said to myself, wow, that's pretty cool, where she put herself into the situation and it was interpreted. It doesn't make too much of a difference whether it's male or female, but it was interesting to note that she put herself into that story.
mm.
And so I love that. I love when people interpret my work in different ways. And I think that's what makes art.
Mhm.
People can just look at something, and some people say like a piece of art, and people say, oh, that doesn't do anything for me, or somebody else with the same art says, hey, that touches me in a
Mhm.
certain way.
I think
And I think that's, yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's a
that's what.
very healthy way of looking at it too. I know Peter gets into a lot of to formulate that kind of stuff. And so it's very healthy, I think, to look at it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
Frank, I really do.
yeah. I like I said, I love when people interpret my work anyway, as long as they like it.
Yeah. And I think that's
If
one of
they
the
like.
absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that makes book conversation, book club meetings to be quite fun. The way, three people, four people, five people could read a particular same book and interpret it in a different manner. Yeah, it's always quite exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's yeah, I love the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and it happens to me too. I'll see a piece of art or listen to something, or and although it's a masterpiece, it doesn't touch me. It has to touch me, and I think that's one of the things that if somebody likes your work, you've touched them in some
Yeah.
way.
Some way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I would love to build on this same question because it's a bit similar to one another. As authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. Now, I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism, especially the negative ones. How do you react to, say, negative criticism of your books in case you've ever had one in the past? Yeah.
Um, as a songwriter and as an entertainer,
Mm,
uh, you can put your best effort out, and there are people that are not going to be touched, they're not going to react to your work.
yeah.
So I don't, uh, as long as the criticism is not to hurt
Yeah.
or to break down or to to put somebody down.
Mm,
As long as I'll listen, of course, and and if I feel that that it's constructive,
Yeah.
uh, then of course I'll listen and say, hey, listen, maybe I can change something on this. But the I think the hardest part for an artist
Mm,
is to not get personal, because you as a writer, and you write something, and it's your baby, so it's kind of,
yeah.
you're a little more protective, so I think it's hard for a lot of artists and writers and stuff to not to take it so personal that they don't see, the advantage of the criticism.
Mm. That's a fun one, really. That's a fun one. I love your take on that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think most artists are like that. Most of my friends are artists in one way or
Wow.
another, and so I know that they feel kind of the same way. Hey, this is mine, and you created it, so it's part of you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you don't hear anything bad about it.
Don't want to.
Yeah. I I'm still back at the fact that you're a detective and yet you have this, you're packed with all this artistry, singer, songwriter, all of this. And I mean, then you get into the aspect, because I'm always fascinated by how writers do things, especially storytellers like yourself, how they craft sentences
Mhm.
and bring words together to make this magnificent song, prose, or just story in general, and how
Mhm.
paragraphs make pages and chapters. I mean, that just alone in itself is beautiful. But now, as far as writing is concerned, how do you get inspiration and ideas to write these stories as well as your songs?
Uh, well, uh, I have a conversation with myself,
Mm.
like
Okay,
like
that's
I'm two
interesting.
people, like I'm two
Love
people,
that.
Yeah.
and then what I do is, I'll let the character talk to me,
Mhm.
and and that's how I get kind of the phrasing. I'm not putting myself into the picture. I'm a listener, and so what I have in my mind, I'm having someone else, a character, whatever, telling me the
Mm.
story or whatever, and that's how I kind of craft the way I want to tell the story.
Mm.
Um, and it's the same thing. Like, people ask me, well, how can you perform in front of people or whatever? And I always had stage fright.
Mm.
I've always I don't think I'm a great conversationalist, but there was an old an old piano player told me one time. Uh, he said, "Look, if you want to, it doesn't matter whether there are 500,000 people or one person in a room. What you need to do, number one, is be yourself, and then go into it as if you're having a conversation with those people. It's a party, and you're just talking to people that you know, and that helped me quite a bit. And I think that's where that other thing came in, where I picture somebody telling me the story, because it's almost like it's a very relaxed situation, and
Mhm.
it's a conversation.
Mm.
And I think that's what helps me out quite a bit in the storytelling.
Wow.
It's
That's
very
quite
interesting.
exciting. That's quite exciting. I particularly like the fact that you mentioned I have a conversation with myself. That's a
Mhm.
beautiful one. And that you let your character talk to you. That's a beautiful one too.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, we do have an inner voice, everybody, right?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
you kind of talk to it anyway. You don't really notice it, but you're talking to yourself. Well, if you're when you're trying to make decisions and stuff, it's a conversation with your inner self.
I
So,
think I experienced this a lot, and I'm not quite sure. Perhaps it might be a thing that most writers are used to, having a conversation with yourself, like having something
mhm.
speaking to your head, and you reply it, and sometimes it might look as if you are going crazy.
Well,
I
you
think,
don't tell people.
Start talking alone.
yeah.
Like, who are you speaking with? Like, oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself. Sorry, I do that a lot.
Yeah. Peter, I think you draw out a really interesting thing there.
Experience.
I see other writers get what we're talking about, or
Mm,
Yes.
musicians and stuff like that, because I like to say the muses in my head,
Mm.
especially another author and I, we will talk about the muses in our head. If I were to talk to somebody off the street about my story and brainstorm, they would think that I was loony. I mean,
Yes.
I didn't know what was going on.
Excuse me.
But you're right. You have that inner conversation with yourself,
yeah.
but it keeps you, it could keep you on a moral compass. It could keep you on a track with your story, the direction you want to go,
Exactly.
and or the song that you want to write. So I think
Right.
it's really important for whether it's new authors out there, like me or something like that. I think it's just very, I think it's okay to be unique and different.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yourself. I think it's something particular to creatives.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's we always talk to ourselves, especially like creative people.
Yeah.
You're going back and forth. Does this sound good, or does this storyline feels good, and you're doing it all the time. I think most people do it anyway, but they just don't realize what they're doing. I think writers are more aware of kind of that separation that you're talking to your inner
I
voice.
actually do that a lot, really. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
That if I think sometimes when my friends are with me, like, who are you talking to? I'm like, oh, sorry, I wasn't talking to you. I'm talking to myself. It's none of your business.
I'd love to be the fly on that wall.
Oh, like,
I
sorry, I'm not
think
talking to you. I'm talking to myself.
Okay, Peter.
I think the
Like,
secret
oh, okay.
is to talk to yourself silently,
I actually talk out loud like Peter does, but I do it.
Sometimes I talk out loud, though.
Yeah, well, I do too, periodically, especially like when I'm in my office. And if my husband hears me, he's like, Cindy, what are you doing? I'm
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, just talking to myself. But I think that's good. But even like take outside of the creative aspect, Peter, I
Mm,
mean,
Mhm.
and Frank, even as a detective, Frank, before writing your stories, you had that inner ability to talk to yourself because that's what kept you safe.
yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I
that's
mean?
true.
So
That's true too.
yeah,
Yes.
and so you take that over into your short story writing and
Mm,
stuff like that. You're just expanding on that, and then you're nurturing it even that much more in your mental aspect, and then you get into your story writing, which story writing is not easy. And I have to commend anybody who writes stories and writes poetry. I mean, to me, that is difficult because you're trying to use something totally out of what is norm to write
Right.
something. And then if you're using your inner um, muses, as we would say, to guide you, I mean, that's definitely it's a challenge in itself to get a message across. But then when you're conversing with yourself to steer that message and direct it in the most way that's conceptual for a reader or a listener, it's like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
you're
Right.
building it.
Right. Well, I think when you do that and you listen to yourself, it gives you a lot of your inner voice gives you a lot of guidance. You
absolutely.
know, you it just gives you guidance as to, and then I think artists also use emotion
Mm,
to listen to that inner part of you. And if sometimes something just doesn't feel right or doesn't sound right to your mind in your mind,
yeah.
now when you go into it kind of another direction, then you feel better and you feel, oh well, this is the way to go.
Mm,
Mhm.
So I think that's a big deal when it comes to artists. And
absolutely.
and you guys are authors also, right? So you know exactly what I'm
I'm
what
not as experienced as Peter.
We can we can easily relate to what you're talking about.
No,
Thank you. Thank you. And now, apart from events of an ordinary life, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
I'm working on another one. I always like the short stories. And because people tell me, well, it's I like that because I can finish a story and then I can stop there and I know that there's another one which might be totally different. So
Yeah.
people that don't like to read like novels and stuff like that, so I kind of like the short story because of that, and they're easier to write for me. I mean, I
Mm.
think I really admire novelists and stuff because it's a lot to really organize and stuff. But I feel so I have something another collection of stories
Yeah.
which and they're short stories also, and I'm following the same pattern. I have like true stories in there, and so I always songs and stuff, always releasing them. So
I really like to understand the process of what another author does because we could all learn from each other's experiences. So,
Mm.
could you tell us what publishing is like for you as a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing your book? And if there's anything else that you'd like to share?
yes, like I said before, this particular book was a blog, so it was a continuous writing. It wasn't I wasn't focused into publishing it, but after a while, someone had told me, hey, these are pretty good, why don't you
Mm.
try the publishing? So I was lucky enough to get a publisher, and but again, the thing is that with publishing, you have to, just like songwriting and just like submitting music, you have to get used to, you can't worry about rejection.
Mm.
That has to be, rejection can either stop you or could catapult you.
Mm.
And that's one thing that you have to know within, that, hey, I want to tell this story, this is my book, and this is going to be published, and that's it. I'm not going to take no for an answer.
Mm.
And that's one thing. Determination is very important. Just focusing on what you want to do and unfocus on the outside influences that are going to be negative and that are going to kind of slow you down.
Mm.
And again, the rejection in publishing, that's one of the problems that I faced, where see, nobody knows what impact you're going to have on the world except you.
Mm.
uh Everybody else is, you're another writer, or you're another singer, or you're another musician, and that's the concept that they have first. So
Yeah.
they have to get to know you, and the only way to do that is to be determined and to make sure that you put your foot forward and put your work out there all the time
Mm.
without
You
work.
said, yeah, you said something very, very powerful in your, yeah, yes, Frank, you really did. Rejection can either stop you or catapult you.
Yes.
I think
Mm.
your self-determination, your passion for what you do is what
Matters.
steers you, and in essence is what you need in order to see yourself through any day, any event and stuff. So kudos to you. I
And
really liked how you phrase that.
I always say, where does that come from? Your inner voice. Your
Mm.
inner voice is telling you the reason that you're writing, the reason why you're singing, the reason why you're doing anything in your life that you love, is
Mm.
because the inner voice is telling you you can be successful at it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't know rejection. It doesn't know. All it knows is, okay, you could do this, so do it.
Mm.
You know, and I think that's where it comes, where it can catapult you, because if you're down and out, and nobody likes your work or whatever, that inner voice is telling you it doesn't matter. What
Mm.
matters is that you can do it. You love to do it. Anything that is focused in love is going to be created, and it's going to come out great. I mean, that's my take on it, but you
Mhm.
know, uh, but that's basically what it is. It could catapult you, or it could slow you down if you start to listen
Mm.
to people, because nobody knows what's good for you except you. Even your family, some family members, oh, why don't you get a real job? And, you know, especially in a musician. But why don't you be a doctor or a lawyer or a plumber, or at least it's something that you can make money on.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that that's not where your love is,
Mhm.
Mm,
you know.
Yeah.
And so I've gone through that with family members and with and stuff like that. So you have to be careful because people might reject your work trying to do something good for you. They have your best interest in their hearts.
mm,
Not that they're trying to, discourage you or anything.
yeah.
And you have to kind of, get away from that and know, that you can do it.
It's
Mhm.
amazing.
But
That's ama
I mean, that's what I feel.
Yeah. I love your take on that. It's an amazing feedback you've got in there and an amazing statement as well. Rejection can either stop you or catapult you. Thank you so much for sharing. And just before we wrap up, is there
No,
anything?
thank you.
Absolutely. And just before we wrap up, is there anything that you would love to share with the viewers about your books that we did not mention in this interview and you'd love the viewers to know? Is there anything?
Um, I would say that the best thing that I can share is um, keep, if you're a writer, keep writing. Write all the time. You have to make what you love a way of life.
Mm,
If you're a writer or a poet or whatever,
mm,
that has to be a way of life. It's not a fleeting thing where, oh, I want to be a writer one day, and then the next day, no, I want to be this. I want to, you whatever you love,
mm,
and if you want to really succeed at it, and success means a lot to many different people.
absolutely.
Success sometimes means more money.
Mm,
Success might be, acclaim. It can mean a lot of things, but the whole idea is make it a way of life, make
mm,
it part of you. Just like when you eat, when you sleep, make it a part of you. And I think that's the best advice I can ever give anybody at all.
mm.
Uh, and you're gonna go far when you do that.
Wow.
That's some solid advice.
Very
It
so.
really is, because if you don't have the passion for it, you're not going to finish a book or anything.
You could be a weekend writer, and every once in a while put it away, and you don't, you know. But if it's your passion, it has to be part of you. It
Yeah.
can't be just a hobby.
I want to make sure that people know, readers know where they can get a copy of your book. Can you tell us where they can do that?
It's in all the major book stores and online stores. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, which is a big book dealer here in the
Yeah.
U.S. Um, they could get it through the Austin Macaulay, which is my publisher in London, and they have like a whole list of places that you can get. You can also go to my website,
Mm,
Okay.
which is frankiem.com, www.frankiem.com. And there's a part in there, and there's a page for Events of an Ordinary Life. And if you click on that, it'll show you a whole list of places that you can get it, outside the United States and also in the United States. So you can order anywhere,
that's
you know,
interesting. And
it's
I
easy
left
enough.
a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Frank Musumusi book directly on Amazon, on Barnes& and Nobles, on his website, and also another platform. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Frank, for accepting the
Oh, no,
invitation.
thank you.
Absolutely.
It has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
It's
And
been definite pleasure.
it's been a pleasure for me too. And I thank you so much for the interview.
My pleasure. Our
You're
pleasure.
welcome.